Okay, the expose continues into Captain Carl Kenneth Francvi, his time at the American Banknote, and the cross sections into money funneling and how it helped enable the Epstein network. So the Khashoggi-Maxwell-Epstein youth connection. The emails claims Nabila Khashoggi and Ghislaine Maxwell's circle went to school together in the UK. The intent to suggest that the trafficking network was built on lifelong generational elite bonds. The evidence. Adnan Khashoggi, Nabila's father, and Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, were both massive, controversial international power brokers in London during the 1980s. They shared the same ultra-high net worth social circles, luxury yachts, and Mediterranean ports of call. Nabila and Ghislaine were social peers in this Euro trash jet set. Jeffrey Epstein's purported ties to arms trafficking are centered on a network of high-level fixers, intelligence figures, and middlemen that he joined in the early 1980s. While never officially charged with these crimes, recent investigative reports and associate testimonies paint a picture of Epstein as a financial facilitator for some of the world's most notorious arms dealers, the Tudor, and the Saudi connection. Adnan Khashoggi, the late Saudi billionaire and arms dealer, a central figure in the Iran-Contra scandal, is frequently described as Epstein's tutor or primary client. Direct mentorship. Reports suggest Khashoggi personally mentored Epstein in London during the 1980s, teaching him how to move large sums of money through offshore accounts to bypass international regulations. Business listing. Khashoggi was listed as a client of Epstein's early consulting firm, Intercontinental Assets Group, the fake passport. When the FBI raided Epstein's mansion in 2019, they found a fraudulent Austrian passport issued in 1982. It contained Epstein's photo, but a different name, and crucially listed his place of residence as Saudi Arabia. Key intermediaries in operations. Sir Douglas Leese, an aristocratic business arms dealer who purportedly introduced Epstein to both Khashoggi and Robert Maxwell. Leese allegedly trained Epstein in arms smuggling and the creation of shell companies. The Iran-Contra involvement. Epstein's associate, Stephen Hoffenberg, claimed Epstein was directly involved in selling Chinese weapons to Iran in 1983. Don't worry, I'm going to tie this all together and you're going to be effing shocked. Epstein allegedly helped clean up the aftermath of Iran-Contra by assisting in the relocation of Southern Air Transport aircraft, a known CIA front company. The BCCI network. Financing for these covert arms deals often relied on the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, the BCCI, which was later shut down for massive money laundering and ties to global intelligence agencies. So, as you can tell, in this sort of persistent pattern, they used a lot of front companies to help funnel money for intelligence, covert, black ops, and BCCI was dead center of that. You know who else helped? The Intelligence in Modern Conflicts, the Israeli intelligence, Amman. Claims exist that Epstein worked with the Israeli military intelligence as early as the mid-80s, facilitating the sale of military equipment to Iran alongside Robert Maxwell. The Yemen and Saudi-Pakistani deals. Declassified documents show that Epstein was kept informed of high-level secret military deals, such as the 2015 agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan to deploy commando forces, the Black Storks, to the Yemeni border. Those connections suggest Epstein's wealth was not built on traditional hedge fund management, but on his role as a financial fixer for subterranean world of weapons trafficking and intelligence-linked money laundering. The mention of the American banknote, which was what Captain Carl Kenneth Francvi was vice president of at the time in the 1970s, in relation to the 1970s and 1980s, connects to the broader financial fixer ecosystem where Epstein, Khashoggi, and international intelligence-linked figures operated. Ding, ding, ding. The Khashoggi and financial bounty hunter link. During the 1980s, Epstein branded himself as a financial bounty hunter. His primary specialty was moving money through offshore accounts in ways that were more difficult to trace, a skill set that became highly valuable after the 1977 Foreign Corrupt Practices Act made traditional bribery more difficult for figures like Adnan Khashoggi. The connection to the American banknote, a company that printed currency and stock certificates, is tied to the securities and physical assets these men were moving. Asset recovery. Epstein's breakthrough came from recovering millions in missing assets for wealthy families like the Aubergons after the implosion of firms like Drysdale Securities in 1982. Shell companies. Epstein used a network of shell companies such as Intercontinental Assets Group to manage the assets of billionaires like Khashoggi and Leslie Wexner. So, the BCCI and covert financing network, while Epstein was building his consulting business, the larger infrastructure for arms trafficking and money laundering in the 1980s was the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, the BCCI, the shadow bank. BCCI was the piggy bank for Khashoggi and various intelligence agencies, CIA and Mossad. It facilitated the very arms deals Epstein is allegedly to have helped finance, currency and bonds. Here we go. The American banknote was a central player in the production of the physical documents, the banknotes and bonds that the shadowy financial world relied upon for legitimacy. Bingo. The fraud and holographic scandal. Later in the 1990s, American banknote holographics, ABNH, became embroiled in one of the era's major fraud scandals involving inflated earnings and falsified documents to deceive auditors, parallel tactics. This mirrors the tactics used by Epstein's longtime business partner, Stephen Hoffenberg, at Towers Financial, where Epstein was a consultant during the 80s. The Ponzi connection. Hoffenberg later claimed Epstein was a financial architect of the Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. Yeah, he was the key architect of this Towers Financial Ponzi scheme, which used fraudulent financial statements to bilk investors of over $450 million. But I guess he got away unscathed from that. His partner, not so much. In short, the American banknote tie represents the physical and institutional side of the laundering network, the printing of the very securities and currency that Epstein and Khashoggi were illicitly moving across borders. You don't say. So, in the 1970s and 1980s, serving as a vice president of manufacturing at American Banknote, which Carl Kenneth Franzwe was serving, that was his role, would have provided a unique vantage point and operational capacity for figures like Jeffrey Epstein and Adnan Khashoggi to facilitate high-level international movements of value. While no single public record names a specific vice president who acted as a direct agent for them, the functional capabilities of that role align perfectly with the financial bounty hunter and arms trafficking narratives. Exactly. Because Carl would have had control over the sovereign printing channels. Yeah, he was in charge of currency for 70 plus countries in the 1970s and 1980s. American Banknote produced currency, passports, and postage for over 70 nations, including those in the Middle East and Latin America, the Channel. As vice president of manufacturing, Carl would have oversaw the physical production schedules and specimen notes. This position could theoretically authorize the production of overruns or off-book currency and travel documents like the 1980 Saudi-issued passport found in Epstein's home without standard corporate oversight. Exactly. Creation of high-value financial instruments, bearer bonds and securities. American Banknote was the world leader in printing stock and bond certificates. The Channel. In an era before digital tracking, bearer bonds were the preferred quote-unquote currency for arms dealers and money launderers because they belonged to whomever physically held them. A manufacturing executive could facilitate the creation of authentic-looking but illicitly issued securities that could be moved across borders as untraceable capital. Facilitation of black intelligence budgets, CIA front operations. During this period, intelligence agencies frequently used private companies to launder money for unauthorized cover operations. The Channel, the manufacturing of physical currency or high security documents, provides a perfect dual-use cover. So basically, payments, legitimate printing contracts could be inflated or diverted to fund these types of covert arms deals, like those involving Khashoggi and the Iran-Contra affair that Epstein is alleged to have helped manage. So Franzwe would have been the manufacturer of all of this. So like I said, the influence over security protocols, the holography and anti-counterfeit tech. In the 1980s, ABN pioneered holograms for credit cards and security documents. The Channel, as vice president in charge of these processes, Carl would have known the flaws or backdoors in security features. This knowledge is invaluable for a network that specialized in moving people via fake IDs and money via fraudulent securities through international borders undetected. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I think it's very interesting. And I think I'm going to show you the tie right on down to Erica. So don't worry, this is going to get real interesting. Access to high-level foreign officials. The direct government relations. As a manufacturer for foreign central banks, American banknote executives had direct access to heads of state and finance ministers. The Channel. This role provided a quote-unquote legitimate reason to meet with the exact Saudi or Emirati officials Khashoggi and Epstein were courting, acting as a bridge between official government business and the subterranean world of private commissions. In summary, the role of the manufacturing vice president at American Banknote, like Carl Kenneth Franzwe, offered physical production power, legitimate diplomatic cover, and technical expertise, the three essential ingredients for global trafficking and money laundering operation described in the Epstein files. Don't worry, it's going to get even crazier. So, currency and passports. American Banknote printed money and travel documents for dozens of foreign governments. A manufacturing vice president like Carl had the authority over physical plates and overruns that could potentially facilitate the creation of high-quality fraudulent documents like the Saudi-issued passport with Epstein's photo. There was also an Austrian one discovered in Epstein's possession. Bearer bonds. As a leader in securities printing, his oversight included the manufacturing of bearer bonds, which are untraceable financial instruments that were a staple for the arms trafficking networks run by Khashoggi. The strategic context of the era, Franzwe's tenure overlapped with a period when the American banknote was deeply involved in international government contracts. Intelligence channels. During the 1970s and 1980s, private contractors like American Banknote often interacted with black budget operations. This is where intelligence agencies required untraceable currency or specialized documents for covert activities, such as those seen in the Iran-Contra affair involving Khashoggi. High-level access. His obituary notes that he was knighted by the King of Sweden for furthering Swedish-American relations, indicating he moved in the same elite international diplomatic and business circles where Epstein and Khashoggi operated as quote-unquote fixers. Personal connections, political alignments. Franzwe was described by his family as always super far right. His granddaughter Erica Kirk, who became CEO of Turning Point USA following the assassination of her husband Charlie Kirk in September 2025. Professional background. Before his corporate career, Franzwe served in the Army Corps of Engineers and the military police during World War II and the Korean War. This background provided him with the security clearance and logistical expertise often sought by intelligence-linked networks, exactly like Khashoggi and Epstein would be looking for, and Douglas Leese, which we'll get into, don't worry. So the summary of the hypothesis: hypothetically, an executive in Franzwe's position would have had the technical means to facilitate the production of the physical tools like IDs, currency, and bonds that Epstein network relied upon. While his public legacy is one of high moral fiber and military honors, his role sat at the exact intersection of manufacturing and sovereign security that the Epstein-Khashoggi network utilized to move across borders. So, the fake passport connection. The strongest peripheral evidence is the fraudulent Austrian passport found in Jeffrey Epstein's safe in 2019. This artifact was issued in May of 1982. The passport bore Epstein's photo, but the name Marius Robert Forelli, and it listed his residence as Saudi Arabia. During the 1970s and 1980s, the relationship between the American Banknote Company and the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, the BCCI, was characterized by their shared role in a shadow financial infrastructure. So, while American Banknote provided the physical tools, currency, and securities, BCCI provided the stateless, quote-unquote, stateless banking network through which those assets were moved. Perfect synergy. Basically, in the 70s and 80s, the role of Sir Douglas Leese, Carl Franzwe, and Adnan Khashoggi formed a specialized network that enabled Jeffrey Epstein to move from a disgraced math teacher to a high-level international quote-unquote fixer. Their collective role was to provide the social entry, technical tools, and financial purpose for a global arms and intelligence network. And that he did build, guys. Sir Douglas Leese, the mentor and the door opener. Douglas Leese was a high-level British defense contractor who reportedly took Epstein under his wing after Epstein's departure from Bear Stearns in 1981. Elite grooming. Leese hosted Epstein at his 15th century estate, South Wraxall Manor, teaching him the manners and pastimes like shooting and fishing of the European aristocracy. The El Yamama deal. Leese was a key architect of the Al Yamama arms deal, the largest in British history, which sold fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. The introduction. Crucially, Leese introduced Epstein to the most powerful early client, Adnan Khashoggi, and to the shadowy world of foreign intelligence and deal-making. Carl Franzwe, the technical enabler. As vice president of manufacturing at American Banknote, Franzwe oversaw the physical production of high-security assets required for this network to operate covertly. Sovereign documentation. Under Franzwe, American Banknote produced currency and passports for dozens of nations, including Saudi Arabia. This technical infrastructure is the likely source for the high-quality fraudulent documents found in Epstein's possession, specifically the 1982 issued passport that allowed him to travel as Marius Robert Forelli. Marius Robert Farelli. Physical liquidity. Franzfi's oversight of the bearer bonds and securities printing provided untraceable physical capital that the arms dealers like Khashoggi used to bypass international banking regulations before the digital age. And don't worry, we're going to find out what happened during the digital age after Carl's retirement. So, Adnan Khashoggi was the primary client and purpose. Khashoggi was the world's most prominent arms dealer and the financial engine that utilized services of both Lease and Franzfi's employer. The financial bounty hunter role. Epstein served as the financial consultant for Khashoggi beginning in 1987, helping to manage and move assets during the height of the Iran-Contra affair, the BCCI connection. Khashoggi's deals were famously financed through the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, which used sovereign documents and securities printed by the American banknote to maintain its legitimate facade while facilitating money laundering for ding, 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 intelligence agencies. And here's a graph to show you how this goes. The summary of the synergy. There's the figures, Sir Douglas Lease, Carl Franzfi, and Adnan Khashoggi. And this is a great chart showing you how this triad created a closed loop. Lease provided the contact, Franzfi provided the IDs and bonds, and Khashoggi provided the billionaire scale wealth that allowed Epstein to claim he only worked for clients with more than $1 billion. There's your triad, there's your closed loop. The lineage connection, the Franzfi link. Erica Kirk is the granddaughter of Carl Kenneth Franzfi, who, as I mentioned, served as the vice president of manufacturing for the American banknote during the 1970s and 80s. The theory critics suggest, the critic is me, the technical expertise and sovereign level backdoors, quote unquote backdoors, available to her grandfather, such as the ability to produce high security IDs and financial instruments, could have been passed down or maintained as a legacy infrastructure. And a legacy infrastructure it is, guys, because in the next part, might come out later today, I'm going to show you how this infrastructure goes down to Lori and Kent and down to Erica, and the ties between the Leases, Khashoggis, Epstein, and them internationally. It's going to get even wilder, but this is your introduction into who is Erica Kirk. Enjoy!